Okay, in this video we're going to use our graphing calculator to enter some data points into our lists, create a scatter plot, generate a median regression line, and then use the equation for that regression line to calculate the residual values for our data points. So the first thing I want to do is I want to enter these values into my list 1 and list 2. So I hit the stat button and then I hit enter and I go into the lists in my calculator, and I'm going to enter these values in my notes here. So in list 1 I've got 2, 4, 7, and 10. And then over here in list 2, my dependent variable values, my y values, are going to be 9, 17, 22, and 36. Okay, so I've got these values in my list 1 and list 2 in my calculator. Now I want to create a scatter plot using these points, using these XY values. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to hit the button, my second button, and then hit the upper left button where it's the y equals, it says stat plot, and that takes me to this screen right here. So if I hit my second and then the y equals button, that takes me to this stat plot screen. And now I notice I've got 3 different stat plots and they're all turned off. Well, I'm going to take the first one, I'm going to hit enter, and that's going to bring up plot number 1. And the first thing I want to do is I want to turn it on. So I hit this enter button where it's on that flashing on. I hit the enter button and that turns my stat plot on. Next I go down, I take my bottom arrow key, my down arrow key, that takes me to the type line. I'm going to select this first icon here. That's my scatter plot icon. My X list, that's the list that has my X values in it. That's list 1. So I've got that as list 1. My Y list, the list with my Y values in it, that's list 2. And then my mark, I'm going to use the square for my mark. And so from here I want to hit my, if I hit my graph button, I notice that I see I've got one little square on my graph, but now I've got 4 points, so I should see 4 points. And I know the reason I don't is because I don't have my window settings right. So let me hit my window button, and these are the settings for just the standard window settings. And so instead of using these settings, I'm going to use some settings that are more appropriate for my data. And I look at the X values in my list number 1 and I see they go from 2 to 10. So I'm going to say my X-min value, let's go from 0 to, let's say go from 0 to 12, just to make sure I get all of my X values in there. My Y-min values, they go from 9 to 36. So let's see, let's go from 0 to, let's go from 0 to 40. That should get all of my Y values in there. So if I use these values for my window settings, and if I hit graph again, now I get all of my points, all 4 of my points on my screen. So this is a scatter plot of my 4 data points. Now I want to generate a median regression line that's going to be a line of best fit going through these data points. I can see my data points are roughly linear. So the way I do this is first I want to go to the main screen, so I hit second quit and that'll take me to my main screen. And now from here I want to select stat. I hit the stat button, which brings up this screen. I want to move over to the calc menu, and then from here I want to go down to number 3 and select the median. So that's a kind of a 3-step process to get the median line. Stat, and then calc, and then median. I hit the enter button here, and that brings up this median function on my calculator. Now I want to enter some more things here before I hit the enter key. I want to enter open parentheses, and then I'm going to say second list 1, that's right above the number 1 key, then the comma key, and then again second, and I want L2 for list 2, and then I'm closing my parentheses. Now all this is doing is telling my median function my X values are in list 1 and my Y values are in list 2. So now I hit enter, and my calculator has generated a median regression line based on the data points that I have in my list 1, list 2. And so my regression line, I can see it's in the form y equals ax plus b. A is 3.375, b is 1.8125. And so this is the equation for my median regression line. So I want to write this down in my notes. Y equals 3.375x plus 1.8125. And now I also want to enter this equation into y1 in my calculator. So I hit my y equals button. That takes me to my y equals screen, and I want to enter that value, I want to enter that equation into my y1 in my calculator. So y1 equals 3.375x plus 1.8125. Okay, so now I've got my equation in my y1 in my calculator, and I want to graph this line along with my scatter plot, and in order to do that, all I do is hit the graph button again, and my calculator will graph that line right along with the scatter plot that I just graphed. And I can see based on that line, it looks like it is in fact a pretty good fit. It's going right through, it looks like right through the center of my 4 data points. Okay, so now I've got my scatter plot, I've got my median regression line. Now I would like to calculate the residuals for this data set. I want to know how far off are each one of my data points from my prediction line. So let me go back to my stat screen. I hit the stat button and enter. Now I'm back to my lists. And what I want to do is, I can see in list 1 and list 2. In list 1 I've got my x values. In list 2 I have my actual y values. And I would like to get my predicted y values over here in list 3. Well, in order to do that, I'm going to enter this equation into list 3. And you can see it there in your notes. L3 equals y1 open paren L1. And we're going to talk about what this means in just a minute. First, we need to figure out how we're going to get this into list 3. So you can see I moved my cursor up to where it's highlighted on list 3. I need my cursor right here. If you try to enter this with this part here highlighted, it's not going to work. So you hit your up arrow, and that moves it up onto list 3. Now I want to get this y1 value into here. And the way I do this is I've got to actually, this is a 4-step procedure. I've got to hit the vars key. The vars key is on the 3rd row of your keys, right there under the arrow keys. I hit vars, and that brings up this screen. I want to move over to this menu right here, yvars, and then I want to hit the function button, number 1. I hit enter here, and finally that brings up the 4th step, which is I want to select number 1 there, which says y1, and I hit enter, and notice that brings up down there at the bottom of the screen, it says L3 equals y1. So that 4-step, the 4 steps that you need in order to get y1 in there are vars, then yvars, then function, and finally y1. Okay, so now I've got L3 equals y1. I want to next say open paren, and I want to get L1 in there. So I say second, hit the second button, and L1 is right above the number 1 key, and I hit that, and then I hit close parentheses. Now what this is doing is it's telling my calculator, it's telling the calculator what values to put into list 3. It's saying, I want you to put into list 3, I want you to use the equation that is in y1 in the calculator, and I want you to use the x values that are in list 1. So it's going to take each one of those x values in list 1, plug it into the prediction equation, which is in y1, and it's going to calculate what the corresponding y value is for each one of those x values. So as soon as I hit enter, it's going to fill up those values into list 3. So I hit enter and it fills those values in. So now all of those values in list 3, those are all of my predicted y values. That is, that's all the y values that my prediction equation is going to predict using the x values from list 1. Okay, so now I've got all my actual y values in list 2. I've got all my predicted y values in list 3. So remember, in order to calculate residuals, we just want to subtract the predicted values from the actual values. And what we're going to do is we're going to put our residuals now in list 4. So if you use your right arrow key and you can move over to list 4, once again move your cursor up to list 4. And now what I want to put into list 4, I want to tell my calculator, put into list 4 the value in list 2 minus the value in list 3. And in order to do that, I just need to say L2 minus L3. So I got my cursor up there on L4. I hit my second button and select L2 minus, and to get L3 I need second and hit my number 3 button. That gives me L3. Now when I hit enter, my calculator is going to take each value that's in list 2, subtract the corresponding value in list 3, and put the difference between those two values into list 4. So now just looking at list 2 and list 3, I can predict, I can take a good guess at what my residuals are going to be. 9 minus 8.56, that's going to be a little bit less than 0.5. 17 minus 15 is going to be about 1.6 something, 1.7 something. My third one, I'm going to have 22 minus 25.4 something. That one should be negative. The other one should be positive. So it looks like I've got one negative residual, that third one down. So let me hit enter and see what I get. And yeah, sure enough, my only negative residual is that 22 minus 25.438. All the rest are positive. And now obviously I could have done this by hand. I could have calculated each one of those residuals just by taking the actual value minus the predicted value for each one of those 4 points. But obviously if I've got a whole lot of points, it's a lot easier to let my calculator do that for me. So I've had my calculator calculate those residual values and put those all into list 4.